Sharper Than a Serpent's Tooth. Written by the Hanged Man 317 and read by Purple Star. Chapter 51. Bloodied and Beaten.
Shut up! You're bleeding. Your face fuck, are those bullet wounds? Keep it the fuck down, you'll wake up Aizawa. Seriously, you're concerned about that? Holy fucking shit, Era! Do I need to call the hospital? Like now? Is that a knife in your shoulder?
Era stumbled to her feet, stumbled over to his bed, and dropped her hand over his face with a dull smack.
Hitoshi, shut up.
That seemed to stun him into silence. Although, judging by the widening of his eyes between her fingers, he might have just been able to see more of her injuries now that she was closer. Great. Well, this was the nightmare scenario. Actually, scratch that. She was alive and conscious, and this was Hitoshi. Out of all of the ways this night could have gone, this definitely wasn't the worst. Era removed her hand from Hitoshi's face, and found that she'd left a smear of what she hoped was dirt on one of his cheeks. Okay, well, it's certainly not top 10 either. Are we good? Are we going to keep screaming? Her voice was so hoarse. She needed to get to the bathroom, clean up a little, maybe pass out on the cool tile for a bit. Yeah, that all sounded nice.
Era,
Hitoshi managed, sounding much like he was choking on his words.
What happened?
I have a regeneration quirk, she said simply. No beating around the bush. Era had no misconceptions about her current appearance. Could feel her flesh rippling as the bullets slowly wormed their way backwards through their tracks. One fell on the ground with a faint clatter, and she breathed as Hitoshi looked down at it, then back up at her. None of these injuries are permanent, so there's no need to worry. Hitoshi cut himself off with a strangled laugh, tugging a hand through his hair.
Right. Yeah. No need to worry. Just, can we take it from the top?
Era huffed, beginning to sway on her feet before she reasserted her strict control. Not yet. There'd be time to pass out later. She just needed to get through this conversation. My quirk isn't any kind of physical enhancement. It's regeneration. I cannot physically die. None of this is life-threatening. Please stop talking so loud. You'll wake up Aizawa.
Maybe I should,
he hissed, though he was noticeably quieter than before.
Name one reason I shouldn't wake up Aizawa.
Era was so tired. This night had been just another mistake in the series of tragic blunders that was her life. More proof that she really did need to be fixed. Needed to beg and break and bleed before she finally got someone hurt. Again. I'm not worth saving. She knew that, and yet it still hurt. Still felt like knives beneath the skin when Stain turned his blade on her.
Can't change what you are, bird.
She knew. She knew. Knew it with the same certainty as the fact that she could not kill that man.
Can't change what you are.
So what did that make her? Weak. It made her weak.
Now you're just a weak-willed child who thinks that pretending to be good will rid her of the blood on her hands.
Stain's voice had joined the chorus in her head, alongside the
walls closing in, can't breathe,
and the
that's all you're good for, bird. That's what you are.
Just more words, untethered and splintering against her skull, and so she was adrift again, lost at sea, struggling against the waves, and kept afloat by pure spite.
One
reason," Era growled, feeling the anger bubble up in her lungs. Or wait, was that blood? It might have been blood. Other than the fact that it's my fucking quirk, so maybe I should decide who knows about it? The last time a teacher found out about my quirk, I ended up on an operating table with half my organs on the fucking black market. So forgive me if I'm a bit trepidatious about the whole prospect. Hitoshi just stared at her. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Aizawa-sensei isn't— Shut the fuck up, Hitoshi. Don't be so naive. You never know someone until you turn your back on them, and I'd rather not find out when the knife is already in my fucking kidneys. His eyes narrowed. Stop telling me to shut up. Fuck. I don't even know what to do. You're bleeding. I'll be fine. Stop worrying so much. Era stiffened, head snapping towards the door. Footsteps in the hallway. No. She wouldn't. She couldn't. I can't do this again. I can't. And the walls closing in, and the dark, and the knowledge that she'd really fucked up this time. That there wasn't any getting out of this one. That her death would be long and slow and painful in the way she knew, with intimate precision, because she'd dealt with traitors before, and— Era turned back to Hitoshi, unable to scrape the desperation from her voice. Hitoshi. Please, Hitoshi. You have to. I need help. Please, you have to. Go to the bathroom. Fuck. I'll cover for you. Just go to the bathroom and stay there. I'll let you know when you can come out. The footsteps grew closer, but for a moment it was all Era could do to stare. To blink in stunned silence as he scowled, stood and ushered her towards the bathroom, hastily turning off the light, and throwing a blanket over where she'd collapsed into the room in order to hide the worst of the stains. Hitoshi, thank me later by explaining this whole fucking mess. Now go! He shoved her unceremoniously into the bathroom and closed the door, leaving Era to stand there in a sickly sort of shock that trembled in her bones. Although, come to think of it, that could have also been the poison. This night sucks. Hitoshi was having a bad night. Oh, it started off well enough. His patrol with Aizawa-sensei was great as usual, even with the burn in his lungs and the hot embarrassment in his face as he struggled to keep up. It was nice. Aizawa-sensei didn't coddle him by any means, but he had his expectations, but they weren't unreasonable. He never shouted, never raised a hand against him, except in sparring, of course. But even then, Hitoshi suspected that he pulled his punches. Hitoshi had been afraid of their teacher at first. The healthy kind of fear. One born of unfamiliarity. Of, don't meet your heroes. And the crippling terror that his idol would end up being like everybody else. Cruel. Unpredictable. Giving him up as a lost cause. But Aizawa-sensei was none of those things, which made it all the more confusing why Era seemed so terrified when she heard his shuffling footsteps. Hitoshi had seen that kind of fear before. Foster home after foster home, the odds demanded he would see some bad ones. That was the fear of a child who'd spoken too loudly in the darkness, had awoken a monster. A child who could never seem to hide the nightlight fast enough. Hitoshi hadn't been that child in a very long time, and maybe that had something to do with how easily he lent his trust to Aizawa-sensei. Era, though, as much as he cherished their friendship, it was becoming increasingly obvious that he knew nothing about her. One thing he did know, however, was that she never asked for help, never begged like that, pleaded with him to hide her away. Era didn't get scared. In fact, sometimes he wondered if she lacked the capacity to feel fear. But this scared her. Hitoshi settled himself on his bed, pulling out his phone to scroll through it lazily. When Aizawa-sensei opened the door, he glanced up as if this was a surprise. I heard shouting. Straight to the point, then. Hitoshi shrugged, motioning vaguely towards Era's empty bed. Yeah, sorry. Era woke me up when she went to the bathroom. It freaked me out a little. I didn't think it was that loud, but sorry. Aizawa-sensei stared at him from the doorway, expression unreadable. Raising a brow, Hitoshi stared right back at him. That was the thing about foster kids. They were good liars. Or at least, the ones who got bounced around as much as he did. That was why no foster parent had ever believed him when he insisted that he didn't start it, that he'd never used his quirk, that he was a good kid and all he wanted was... Shinsou, said Aizawa-sensei, snapping him out of his thoughts. He was staring somewhere past Hitoshi, and turning to follow his gaze revealed, oh shit. Why is the window open? Fuck. Hitoshi shrugged, looking back at his phone. It was getting stuffy in here. Sorry. Should I close it? Silence. And Hitoshi didn't dare look up. Aizawa sighed. There is an alarm on that window. Care to tell me why it didn't activate? Too easy. He shrugged again. Probably Era's doing. You know how she is. She messed with it a little bit before opening it. Why? Are we in trouble? No, you're not in trouble. Aizawa hesitated, lingering in the doorway before pulling back with a weary sigh. We'll talk about this in the morning. Just keep it down in here, okay? Of course, Aizawa-sensei. He left, and Hitoshi let out a shaky breath. Great. One crisis averted. On to the next disaster waiting to happen. Era, he whispered, rapping his knuckles against the door. Era, he's gone. A muffled groan answered him. Gritting his teeth, Hitoshi pushed open the bathroom door, wincing as it stopped with a dull thud against something on the ground. He managed to shuffle through the gap, stumbling out into the bathroom and almost tripping over a prone Era. Kneeling down, he nudged her in the shoulder uncertainly. Era. She gave him another groan in response. Era, he said more firmly. Talk to me. More incoherent noises, muffled by how her face pressed against the tile, before she finally managed to spit out 2 words. Fuck off. Hitoshi sighed and leaned back to sit against a wall. Great. You're welcome, by the way. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. They sat there for a while, the silence punctuated only by Era's harsh breaths and the sound of his own fingernails tapping against the drywall. At last, Hitoshi spoke. What happened? Harris's body shook with a wet, spluttering laugh. I got shot, dumbass. Yeah, I can see that. Details? Well, see, someone took a gun and aimed it at Era. Silence. Then she shifted on the ground, rolling over to face him with a wince. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get you involved in my shit. Even like this, I didn't...
You shouldn't have had to cover for me like that. It was sloppy. Stop. I don't need your apologies right now. I need answers. She nodded, the action dragging her cheek against the ground and leaving a smear of blood in its wake. Hitoshi grimaced, standing to find a washcloth and run it under the water as Era spoke. Fuck, I don't know where to start. It's been a long time since I've actually... She sighed, and Hitoshi glanced at her out of the corner of his eye to find that she was scratching at her wrists. I have a regeneration quirk. I guess we can start there. Yeah, you've made that pretty clear. Right, I guess I have. Well, my life's been kind of a mess since it came in. I was quirkless until, I don't know, 13. Never had the toe joint bullshit, but some quirks just never come in. Practically quirkless. That was me. Hitoshi kneeled down beside her with the washcloth in hand, wavering as he was struck with a sudden uncertainty. Era saw him, laughed, and reached out to grab it from him. She missed it by inches, hand falling towards the ground again. Shit. My depth perception's going, I guess. Probably the poison. Hitoshi thought he was all out of shock at this point, although those words did help overcome his anxiety enough to slap her grasping hand aside and dab the washcloth across her face himself. Era stared up at him before her eyes started to the side. Thanks. You're going to have to scrub a little harder than that. Blood can be a bitch to get off. He just huffed. No, seriously, I'm not fragile. You won't hurt me. Keep talking, Era. Right, keep talking. That's what I'm good at. She sighed again, hands returning to her wrists. Okay, Quirk came in later. Things have been shit since then. I think that pretty much covers it. No, it doesn't. You don't want all the sordid details. Trust me. Let's see, already mentioned the organs thing. Not great. 0 out of 10. Would not recommend. Yeah. Okay, see, a little more detail would be nice. You don't want the details, Hitoshi. She sounded exhausted. Seriously, you don't. Hitoshi hesitated, pulling the washcloth away to find it already soaked through with blood. He stood to rinse it out again, though maybe at this point it would be better to just dump her in the tub. Would the noise wake Aizawa-sensei? Probably. Shouldn't you, I don't know, tell the police or something? I can't do that. Why not? I just can't, okay? I can't do that. So, the people who did that, they're still out there? They never got arrested. Era let out another laugh, this one devolving into a painful coughing fit. Yeah, she wheezed. Yeah, you could say that. And you're worried it will happen again. In a matter of speaking, yes. Hitoshi groaned, kneeling down again to tug the washcloth around her neck. Why is there so much blood here? We're friends, right, Era? Friends tell each other when they're scared. I'm not scared, she snapped, eyes glinting with dull anger. I don't get scared. Hitoshi let the silence fall between them again, unsure how to respond, until a thought suddenly struck him. Wait, hold on. Where were your parents during all this?
I was kind of hoping you wouldn't ask that. It was a little embarrassing that he hadn't considered it sooner, honestly. But he supposed being a foster kid meant his first thought was usually never go to the parents. Let's see. Era sighed. My parents are out of the equation. Does that answer your question? No. Cool, my mom's dead. That good? I'm sorry. Era shrugged, wincing when it tugged at her wounds, and Hitoshi slapped her lightly with the washcloth. No need to be sorry, never met her. And your dad? She tensed, sucked a breath between her teeth, tapped a meaningless rhythm against the cool tile. Era, what's inconsequential? My parents are both out of the equation. So, are you in the foster system then? After some hesitation, she shook her head. Hitoshi stared down at her, brow furrowing. Then what? My living situation is of no concern. I'm your friend, Era. It concerns me. She let out a strangled noise, staring up at him before looking away again. Yeah, you're my friend. Which is why I really didn't want to get you involved with this whole mess. Hitoshi felt a spark of anger in his chest. Excuse me? I care about you, Era. You shouldn't have to hide shit from me. What did you think I was going to do? This, said Era wearily. Get over-invested. Care. I don't want you to care. Why? It's a recipe for disaster. You'll only get hurt. Hitoshi rolled his eyes, standing to rinse out the washcloth again. Right, because I can't take care of myself. Era winced. I never said that. There are some things you're unprepared for. Like what? He scoffed. Like getting shot, Hitoshi, or poisoned, or burned, or locked alone in a dark room. He hesitated, wringing out the washcloth in the sink, and watching the pink water swirl down the drain. I might be familiar with that last one. Silence. There was a growl to Era's voice when she spoke. A blistering fury that seemed to come from nowhere. Who? It's not important, he said hastily. What matters is Hitoshi. Who? No one. It's fine. I'm not there anymore. He knelt down again, trying to tug the clumps of blood from her hair. It doesn't matter. It matters, Era snarled, hands curling into fists. I'll kill them. I can't tell if that's heartwarming or terrifying. Silence is worse than anything, Hitoshi. It's the shadows move. I hate it. I hate it. Whoever did that to you, I will— Era, said Hitoshi as firmly as he could manage. It's not that big of a deal. She quieted for a moment, hands unclenching. If anyone ever does that to you again, tell me, and I'll make sure they suffer for it. Once again, not reassuring. Hitoshi, that's not okay. He stared down at her, halfway through pulling another clump of blood from her hair with his already stained washcloth. Do you even hear yourself? Actually, it's a little difficult. I think I damaged something with those flashbangs. Era, you're saying that it's not okay for any of that shit to happen to me, right? She tensed against the tile. What? Did something else happen too? I swear to God, Hitoshi, I will end them. Just point me in the right direction and I will wipe them from this earth. Era! He hissed, Nothing else happened. Shut up for 10 seconds. Why are you so mad about it happening to me, but not to you? Era paused, and Hitoshi desperately hoped that she was considering his words and hadn't finally passed out from blood loss. You, she said at last, interrupted by another cough. You don't deserve it. But you do? Asked Hitoshi incredulously. She didn't answer, and he scowled. What the fuck, Era? You don't deserve that either. You don't know, she murmured, turning to press her face into the tile. You don't know what I am. I deserve it. Do you think I'm stupid? She bristled. I never said that. Do you think I'd be friends with you if you were, I don't know, evil or something? Era didn't respond. Hitoshi sighed, leaning his head back against the wall. You're ridiculous. You're 15, Era. You don't deserve that, okay? Are you still in danger? Another pause. No. Hitoshi stared at her. She didn't meet his gaze. Era, I think we should tell Aizawa-sensei. Do that and you've as good as killed me. A little dramatic? No, just realistic. Hitoshi, think about this. Think about everything I've said. About what he'd have to do if he found out. It wasn't difficult to piece together, which was why it was so infuriating, because they could trust Aizawa-sensei. He was sure of it, but was he really? Aizawa-sensei was a fine enough teacher, but Era was right. He didn't really know him. Just because he hadn't hit them or screamed at them or ridden them off just yet didn't mean he lacked the capacity for it. Which was, well, it was a sobering thought. Because if Era's parents were really out of the equation, and if she really wasn't living in a foster home, then that meant she'd somehow gotten out of the system, slipped beneath the radar. Which meant if Aizawa-sensei discovered the truth, he'd be obligated to shove her back in. She'd be paired with a foster home at best, and at worst, it sounded like her father was still alive. She refused to even speak about him. Hitoshi could read between the lines, had homed with enough abused kids to know the little tells, how they spoke without speaking. Era's dad was bad news, and it was entirely possible that he still held custody rights. What could Aizawa-sensei do? Nothing, realistically. Just make things worse. Fuck. Why were adults always screwing things up? He angrily dabbed the washcloth at her neck again. Fine, I won't tell him. Explains the stupid fucking cape you're wearing. She laughed, and before Hitoshi knew what was happening, her hand wrapped around his own and just held it. Thank you, she whispered, her voice ragged and hoarse. Thank you. It is, quite literally, the least I can do, he said dryly, unsure what to do with his hand. No, it's not. No one's ever. Thank you. Shit. We're friends, Era. Right? And friends help each other. Yeah, friends help each other. She didn't sound so sure. He sighed, squeezing her hand slightly. They do. And they also tell each other the truth. No matter how bad it is. Because they trust each other. Hitoshi, I trust you, Era. And he did. Against all odds, he really did. Because Era might have been obnoxious sometimes, might have lied to him about all of this, but ever since they'd made amends, he hadn't felt alone when she was around. Hadn't felt scared in the way that the cornered and friendless do. She had his back, and he trusted her. It stung a little that she didn't feel the same. "I trust you," she croaked, almost too softly for him to hear. She pulled her hand away, curling her fingers in her tattered clothes. "I trust you, Hitoshi. You're something special, you know that. You're going to be... I don't want you to get hurt. Not for me." "Well, that's too bad, because unfortunately for you, you're stuck with me." He grinned, but she didn't match it. "I trust you. We're friends," she muttered, as if to herself. Hitoshi sighed, patting her lightly on the shoulder. "Yeah, let's get you cleaned up, okay?" End of chapter 51.